1 second, people. I don't know. I'm not able to stop the laugh, but I don't know why I'm laughing also. But it makes me happy sometimes for no reason. Hmm? So what are we looking at today? Locomotion and movement. Okay. So today's session we are going to talk about locomotion and movement. Most This is a particular topic where people think, all right, this is not necessary, or some people will think that okay, yeah, it's not as interesting as body fluids and circulation or digestion and absorption. For some people, okay, looking at the mechanism of RAS pathway or the neural control and coordination or the parts of the eyes and ears or the parts of the brain and what regions they control. So when you look at all this topic, when it comes to locomotion and movement, many people will think, this is a little bit of dry topic. But guess what, guys? From the movement of your eyes, right, or the movement of your tongue to swallow, to talk, or for you to move around, or change your posture when you sleep, when it is very uncomfortable, and then when you're just sitting in one position and you just want to move, right? Or you want to win a race, or you want to climb a mountain. For everything, movement is very, very important. But even when it comes to our medical sciences, right? So when it comes to study of bones or study of muscles, it has a huge window of opportunity where a lot of people really, really require help in this. So, anyways, we're not talking about the opportunities, nor we're not talking about how boring is the topic or how interesting it is. But, anyways, it is quite nice to understand what is locomotion and movement and how things support us to for this particular objective. So when we talk about locomotion and when we talk about movement, so if you look at all living organisms, whether it is plant kingdom, whether it is animal kingdom, whether it is monera, protista, and fungi, across all the kingdoms, organisms have developed very specialized mechanism, very unique ways to exhibit movement, to exhibit locomotion. First of all, why is it even necessary? Is our first question. So you might ask me a question. So you look at the photosynthetic organisms. Why do they have to move? So now some people will tell photosynthetic organisms like plant do not move at all. So they're fine. They're doing absolutely all right. So then what are we talking about movement here? So when you look at a plant or a tree, so you might think that they're stationary and they're not moving. But if you look at the cellular level, when we look at things at cellular level, what is happening here, students? So you can see the development of pollen tube. Okay, that is a form of a growth and movement, right? It is reaching towards something. Okay, so that is one type of movement we can observe. So our movement of some of the substances, such as the sap of a plant, okay, or water or minerals, they all have to be transported, correct? So when you see the movement of the trees and plants towards reaching towards the light, or geopolarity, where they develop the root system where the water source is present. So all this is a type of a movement. Even the growth is associated with it, but you can see that it is moving towards a specific direction. And also, if you look at unicellular organisms, even though they had everything, let's say that we have cyanobacteria, or let's say we have any of the photosynthetic organisms, they have everything. So why do they have to move? So the thing is very simple. Movement is developed or it is evolved across all the organisms for a specific reason, such as in search of food, escaping the prey, or hunting a predator, or escaping from a predator, or hunting the prey. Okay, and to escape the change in the climatic conditions in the form of migration, right? So you can see, or to just adjust to that particular environment, so or to for easing your body postures. So there are thousands of reasons that we can just collaborate to understand why even the movement is necessary among all living organisms. So the advantage of having this evolution in movement has resulted in tremendous amount of distribution of life across our planet, and it has resulted in tremendous amount of diversity in the forms of living organisms, such as if you see birds and humans, they have developed their forelimbs into wings, and we have developed our forelimbs into fine digits, that is enabling us to grip, eat, write, okay, and do many more activities. Correct? So when it comes to uh, one of the important definitions of what is movement and what is locomotion. So if I ask you the difference between it, obviously I would get at least 80% to 90% or even 100% right answer from you. Correct? So you would definitely give me a right answer. So some of you will tell movement is anything that is a change, okay, in its relative position. Correct, right? For example, it can be contraction, it can be swallowing. Okay, even though you're sitting in the same position, I can just blink my eyes and call it a movement. Or I can just swallow some food and call it a movement. Correct, right? So similarly, can I call it as a locomotion? No. Locomotion is when you're displaced from one position to, not like moved from point A to point B. So that is called as a locomotion. So locomotion is possible only through movement, correct, right? So we can just conclude with a single statement telling that all locomotion is movement. Sorry, all locomotion is movement, and all movement is not locomotion. Okay, I hope I think that I was a little bit fast when I was trying to tell you this. So let me repeat this the statement again. All locomotion is movement, but all movement is not locomotion. Correct, right? As I just laid down simple examples like swallowing or blinking your eye or nodding your head, okay, or moving your arms, front and back or up and down, whatever it is. This is not locomotion, but this can be collectively called as movement. Correct, right? Whereas locomotion is something that will displace you from position A to the position B with the help of movement. So that is what it is. So if you see, all, as I said, all plants and animals, they exhibit wide range of movements. Okay. And you can also see subcellular movements. So what is subcellular movements within the cell? So in the cell, you might have heard about cytoplasmic streaming. So cytoplasmic streaming is a kind of a movement that is seen in unicellular organisms, okay, such as your monera and your protista and fungi and even plants. Okay, they exhibit this cytoplasmic streaming, where when you just put your microscope, you might know about what is time lapse, right? Now you know what is time lapse because you are very good with your phones. So if I time lapse, that means you record a long length of video and then fasten the video. So when you just look at it, you can see a beautiful movement that is occurring in a streaming fashion, okay, within this protoplasm of a cell. So this movement is highly essential for many of the lower organisms, including the plants. So the cytoplasmic streaming enables the movement of particles within the cell. That is first thing, and it also enables to change the shape of the cell, squeeze the cell, move the cell, okay, and then push some of the cytoplasmic ingredients and form something like pseudopodia, etc. So cytoplasmic streaming or the protoplasmic streaming can be seen in unicellular organisms such as amoeba. Okay, that is how they make pseudopodia and they're able to walk. Okay, and the movements of cilia, you know what is cilia, right? And flagella and even tentacles are shown by many organisms, and they show both movement as well as locomotion. Okay, so whereas human beings, being the advanced organisms, um, let's say not only human beings, we're mammals. Okay, all mammals exhibit a wide variety of movements with complex design with help of limbs, jaws, eyelids, tongue, etc. Okay, so as I said, the movement can result in the change of a position of a particular organism, which we call it as a locomotion. Okay, so usually such voluntary movements with your will, you change your position is called as locomotion. Okay, some of them are you walk, run, climb, fly, swim. Okay, these are all some of the examples of locomotory movements. So if you look at some of the examples, such as even our cells that are present in a complex organism like us, they exactly match to a lower organisms such as amoeba or paramecium or a euglena. So what are those some of the examples that we can look at? Our body can exhibit amoeboid movements like amoeba-like movements. They can also exhibit ciliary movement, and they exhibit complex movements with respect to muscular movements. So why is it necessary for us to understand this? So if you look at amoeboid movements is our blood cell, let's take a situation why we require amoeboid movements. If you look at our circulatory system, and I ask you a question, what type of circulatory system do we have? And the answer that comes out of your mouth would be, right now, you will tell we are closed circulatory system. We have closed circulatory system. What is the meaning of closed circulatory system, students? That means all our blood vessels are compactly packed, and they are not open. Correct, right? They are closed. So when the blood vessels are supplied to our tissues, let's say this is arteries, arterioles will become smaller arterioles will become blood capillaries, and the capillaries are the end point. So if you look at the capillaries are actually closed tubes, so that does not allow any of the blood components to escape out of this tubular network. So now, like our red blood cells and the white blood cells, they stay within this tubes or the capillaries, and only the plasma part will be able to escape out of this particular tubes and soak our tissues with this plasma fluid, which is rich in oxygen, which is rich in nutrients, etc. But sometimes what happens within the tissues that we have, okay, there might be some of the cells which are prone to the attack of bacteria, okay, or virus, okay, or any of the spores, etc. At that point, we have special type of white blood cells, such as macrophages. Especially macrophages are amoeba looking like cells, so they exactly look like this, amoeba looking like cells. What these macrophages do is they do the job of policing. They're like police. So they are able to change their cell size and shape and squeeze between the cells of the blood capillaries, and they escape out of the system. So they escape out of this tubular network, and they police between the cells and the tissues, and they find if, or they catch if any of the cells or if any of the agents are not belonging to our body. That means antigens, such as it might be bacteria, it might be virus, or it might be fungi, or it might be spores, anything. Okay, or even the cells that are infected by the virus. So once they come across this, what they do is they crawl between the tissues using what movement? Amoeboid movement. So this amoeboid movement is brought about by the change in the protoplasmic, by the modifications of the protoplasm. And the second thing is they also have a very flexible cytoskeleton. Okay, cyto means cell, skeleton means the skeleton of the cell. So the cytoskeleton and the protoplasm of these cells enable them to squeeze and go across tissues and then grab them, eat them, and digest them. So that is one of the movements that is similar to that of our lower organisms, such as amoeba. Next one, coming to the ciliary movements. So the ciliary movements is very advanced movements. Okay, so you need ciliary movements for a variety of roles in our body. So let me give you a name of one of the tissues. Okay, I can write here. I hope you can see pseudo ciliated columnar columnar cuboidal cuboidal, and I will write it here, epithelium. Have you heard about this name of the cell, that is pseudo-ciliated columnar cuboidal epithelium? Have you heard about this, students? Okay. Have you heard about the name of this? Let me see. I'm sorry. Let me see if you guys have an answer. Have you heard about the name called pseudo-ciliated columnar uh, cuboidal, pseudo-ciliated columnar epithelium, not the cuboidal epithelium? I'm sorry about it. I'll just erase this. Columnar epithelium. Okay, pseudo-ciliated columnar epithelium. Okay, sorry. Have you heard about this? Yes? No? Yeah, you heard about it? No, that is a before. Tell me, students. Yes, no? Very important cell actually. Are you following me? Am I audible? Hello, guys. Are you awake? No, you're not heard. It's okay, no problem. Okay. So I assume the same answer. Okay, I'll think that it's the same answer for all of you people. Even one doesn't know means everybody doesn't know. Okay. So let's see what it is. Why did I even talk about it? So the see, I will give you one situation. Let's say that you have traveled a little bit in our cities, or yeah, best thing is when you travel within the city, and then you're riding a bike, let's say, and or you're traveling by an auto, or you have taken a bus, and let's say that you have been exposed to a lot of dust during the day. Okay, so now what happens? I have whole day I have like taken a lot of dust while breathing, but the next day or in the later evening of that day, slowly I start accumulating a cough. Okay, cough in my throat, and a cough keeps coming. Okay, keeps coming, and I have not got cold. I don't have cold, but the cough keeps accumulating for a certain period of time, maybe half a day, maybe for a few hours, etc. So how did I start getting cough? And why was dust responsible for it? So if you look at your respiratory tract, especially in your nostrils and your trachea, and your pharynx and your trachea, okay, and then your bronchioles, primary, secondary, and tertiary bronchioles, the epithelial lining of these, the windpipe or the lining of the respiratory tract, we'll call it as. So they are made up of specialized cells called as pseudociliated columnar epithelial cells. So what they do is the cells, the columnar cells of these, sorry, where do I write? Oh yeah, here it is. Okay, see, they are like in a columnar fashion, and on their surface, on the surface, they have hair like structures like cilia like this. What they do is they all show a movement that is in one direction. What is the direction? They are all pushing something upward. So all the dust and the debris that we have taken during the breathing time, okay, while we breathe, now what happens? They all are trapped within this columnar epithelium as far as they can get it. Okay, so now they don't want this thing or the dust or whatever it is to end up in your alveoli. So for that, what they do is they start pushing it upward through your respiratory tract. So as they keep pushing, they mix with the mucus as well as they push it upward. So they come up, all the dust that is trapped within the mucus, they come up and up and up, and finally they reach your throat. You can feel almost when they're here. So then you just pull it up and then help it come more faster. And then while it is in your throat, your mind gives you two options. What is that option? Whether to swallow or to spit it. Okay, now we know what we choose. Most of them spit wherever we want, right? The reason is this one. And one guard or one important defense mechanism that we have in our respiratory tract is through cellular movements. So what kind of cells we have? We have pseudociliated columnar epithelial cells that help us keep our respiratory tract as clean as possible. Okay, so that is one example. And second example is if you take the female genital tract. So the female genital tract, I think we definitely don't know the parts of the female genital tract, but I will tell you something. See, I think I need a space. Okay, let's say I have some space here. See, we know that we have the females have two ovaries, correct? And then the ovaries release ova, and they are taken up by tubes called as fallopian tubes. And these fallopian tubes, okay, they collect the eggs. They collect the eggs, that is ova. So this is the genital tract. Okay, I mean, very roughly I'm just writing, this is not proper way, but anyways, with the time constraint we'll just make it as simple as possible. Okay, so what happens is the egg released from the ova, let's say that egg is released from this ova. Once the egg is here, now the genital tract of the female do not have they have the contractions within the fallopian tube, Fallopian tube is also called as oviduct. Okay, so for your convenience, so the oviduct takes the egg from here and then it transports. This is the uterus, or what you call it as garbh. Okay, or womb in common language, and then we have the cervix and vagina. So what I'm trying to tell is the lining of the genital tract, female genital tract, is also made up of genital epithelium which are ciliated. Okay, so we call it as fallopian flagella or fallopian cilia. So this is fallopian tube, isn't it? So they are also lined up by something like fallopian flagella or fallopian cilia. So what is the role of this? If the egg is not fertilized, their role is to push this egg, okay, towards the uterus. Similarly, if the egg is met by the sperm and fertilized, okay, when it becomes a zygote, so its responsibility is to push the zygote towards the uterus. That is the second responsibility. And the third responsibility is when the insemination happens. That means when the sperms are deposited in the female genital tract, what happens is the same cilia, okay, vaginal cilia, or you have the, you know, fallopian cilia, all of them, they direct the sperms, or, you know, with their beating motion, they help the sperm reach the egg as fast as possible. So another movement, another ciliary movement that comes up is the female genital tract, and the other example is the respiratory tract of the humans, where we exhibit ciliary movements. One is for the defense mechanism, and second thing as a transport mechanism within our body. Okay. Now, coming to the prior slide, the final movement that we have is the muscular movement. So the muscular movement is the most common type of movement that we use, okay, for multiple things. So what can be the multiple things? For example, the voluntary movements like walking, talking, swallowing, okay, and then sometimes it is voluntary and involuntary, that is like closing your eyes or sniffing, okay, and then movement of your head, whatever it is. So these are voluntary movements. And some of the involuntary movements like swallowing, so the transportation of food through the alimentary canal is involuntary movement. Okay. And the second thing is when the blood is circulated, okay, so the muscles of your blood vessels are also made up of smooth muscles. Okay. And the way they change, for example, vasoconstriction, vasodilation, it's not in our control, right? So these are some of the movements that happens with the help of muscles. So this we call it as muscular movements. Okay. Are you guys able to understand what I'm trying to talk here? Yes, no, students? Yes? Are you able to follow? Yes. Others? Okay. So I will continue. I hope it's not a problem. Yes, understanding. Thank you for your response. That makes it more easier and happier. Okay, so you can see some of the examples also. For example, you can see the hydra. Hydra can use its tentacles either for movement or for like capturing a prey as a movement, and then for changing its position, that is locomotion. Okay, and in paramecium, you can see the cilia helps in the movement of food. Okay, it directs the food to get through the gullet or cytopharynx. Okay, and it also helps in the locomotion as well. Okay, so now muscle. So when it comes to movement, our body is specialized with the association of bone with muscle, correct, right? So muscles become such an important factor within our body, correct? So that is why you need to build a proper muscle, or you need to have proper muscles. Okay, so let's see what are muscles and how do they help us, and what kind of movement they bring about, or what is the mechanism of the muscle contraction. Okay, so let's see. So what is muscle? Muscle is a specialized tissue, obviously. Okay. Why do we call it a specialized tissue? Because muscles perform a specific function. That is why we call it as a specialized tissue. And how are they originated? Muscles are mesodermal in origin. So I think I don't need to explain what is mesodermal in origin. So we are triploblastic organisms, isn't it? We have endoderm, ectoderm, mesoderm in our blastula. So the mesoderm is a middle layer when we are in the blastula stage. So as we develop, okay, as the blastula keeps on developing during our embryonic development. Now, the mesoderm layers are some of the layers that develop into neural tissue as well as the muscle tissue. Okay, so muscles, when they ask what is the muscle, is what derivative, or muscle origin is where. So muscles are specialized tissue that are mesodermal in origin. So how much of muscle do we have? We have around 40 to 50% of our body weight is made up of muscles. Okay, so muscles, what is the property of muscles? Muscles exhibit a certain property such as elastability. So do we have elastic characteristics of a muscle? Yes or no? For example, let's say if I ask the boys in our classroom to flex, okay, so what do? They flex, they show their biceps, okay, they show their triceps. So now what happens? They change their shape. Either they extend their muscles or they contract their muscles. But after, like a rubber band, like you stretch it, and then when you release it back, it comes back to its original position. That's what how our muscles behave as. So they have excitability, elasticity, and then we have extendability as well as contractile nature. Okay, contractile, excitation, extendable, as well as elastic are some of the properties of muscles. Anyways, remember again, we might think that this is a small point. The properties of the muscles include these four things. Which one are those? Excitability, they can be excited through our stimulation. Second thing, contractility. Contractile nature is when they decrease their size. Okay, next one is extendability, they can be stretched. Next one is elasticity, once they're stretched or compressed, they can regain their original position, original shape or position. So these are some of the four properties of muscles. Now, muscles are not same across our body. It is completely different. Okay, now based on their position and based on their properties and their function, muscles can be divided into three important types. What are those? So muscles, based on the location and function, we can divide it into, first important one is the skeletal muscle, and then very important one is the visceral muscles, and the third one is the cardiac muscle. Each of these muscles have their own properties, they have their own unique nature. That is why they have been classified into three different types. So now let us see the properties of each type of muscle and understand their nature. First, we talk about the skeletal muscles. So when I talk about skeletal muscles are the ones that are associated with our skeletal system. So that is the first thing you have to remember. And the second thing is, if they are associated with my skeletal system, what I'm able to do, for example, if I need to fold my fingers, I'm able to fold it. If I want my hands to move, I'm able to move it with my will. If I want my neck to be rotated, I'm able to do it with my will. So, what does it say? These are the muscles that listen to me. So, why do they listen to me? Because they are voluntary. So, they are able to listen to my thought process and act according to my thought process. So, that is why, that is one of the most unique properties of skeletal muscles. So, skeletal muscles are under our control. Okay, they are voluntary muscles. So, that is one of the major, properties of our skeletal muscles. So, what are they? They are associated with our skeletal components of our body. And then when you look at the muscles, so if I take the muscles of my hand, okay, and then I take one muscle, one proper muscle, and then I look it under the microscope, I see that there are packets of how these muscles fibers are packed. Then I take some of the fibers from this. I will talk about how they look like. Okay, I take this packet and then I get the muscle fibers. And when I look at the muscle fibers under the microscope, what they appear is, they appear that they are bands. Okay, so the muscle fibers, they appear in the form of bands. So if you look at this, I don't think so it's much clear for you, but anyways, so they appear in the form of dark bands and light bands. So just like stripes, okay, they appear in the form of stripes. So in some portions they are dark, in some portions they are light, and they are alternate bands. So for every dark there is light. See, light, dark, light, dark, light, dark. So that is how these muscle fibers have a stripy appearance when we look them under the microscope. Which muscles? The skeletal muscles. The skeletal muscles show a striated appearance or the stripy appearance. So that's why they are called as striated muscles. So we will talk about why they're stripy, what is the composition of these muscle fibers in a while. So as I told you, the one of the major characteristic feature of our skeletal muscles is the voluntary control of it. That means it is in our somatic control, okay, of our nerve system. So we are able to control our nerves, okay, control our thought process. Through our thought process, these muscles listen to us. So that's why they're called as voluntary muscles. Okay. So what is their primary function? Obviously, locomotion and the actions of your body, such as movements of your somatic tissues, such as if you want to fold your fingers, this is called as a movement. If I want to change my position, that is called as a locomotion. Correct, right? So, and also to change your body postures. So these muscles are very, very important. Now, coming to the second type of muscles, one you have is a skeletal muscle, and the second thing you have is a smooth muscle, or it is also called as visceral muscles. So the smooth muscles and visceral muscles are as equal as your skeletal muscles. Now, these are the muscles, when I look at them, they do not have this stripy appearance. Okay. And they don't have this stripy appearance, and they look very smooth in nature by their appearance, such as they have, you see, they have the pointy ends. Okay. Each of these muscle tissues have pointed out ends, and they do not have stripes. That's why they're called as smooth muscles. So the smooth muscles come in two different varieties. One is circular muscles, other one is longitudinal muscles. Anyways, the details of it is not much necessary for us. The important characteristic feature of the smooth muscle is these are the muscles which are not at all in the control of our thought process. Okay. So they do not listen to us. So they, who do they listen to? They are completely autonomous. So they are completely involuntary, and our brain, okay, our brain controls these without the control of our thoughts. Our thoughts cannot control this. For example, until the food gets into my lower pharynx, I'm able to spit it out. I have a choice. I still have a choice until my food gets into the lower throat. After it goes down, can I tell my muscles to get it back? No, right? Or even if you put your head down and your legs up and swallow the food, it just goes directly into the stomach. Your muscles don't behave in the opposite direction, except when you're vomiting. Correct, right? So this is something which you're not having the control over. So the best example is your entire alimentary canal, such as your muscles in the esophagus, muscles in the stomach, your small intestine, your large intestine, etc. As well as you have your muscles of your urethra, muscles of your urinary bladder, okay, and then you have the muscles of your blood vessels, especially. They all come across smooth muscles. Now you might tell, so blood vessels are tubes. Do they contract and relax? Definitely they contract. Definitely they relax. You might have heard about vasoconstriction and vasodilation. Correct, right? In vasoconstriction, what they do, they change their shape into wider blood vessels. They become smaller. So how did they change? Because of the contraction of your muscles layers that are present within your blood cells. So that is why they are smooth muscles. They are also called as involuntary muscles, and they're also called as non-striated muscles. Okay. So what did I tell you? They are not under the control of our thought process or under our the nerve system. Therefore, they are called as involuntary muscles. Okay. What are their functions? The movement of food in our digestive tract, movement of gametes in the genital tract. The first thing, the ciliary movements we talked about, movement of blood, vasoconstriction, vasodilation. Okay. The tubes of the urinary bladder, etc. All of them, they are smooth muscles. Okay. Next one comes the cardiac muscles. The cardiac muscles are very unique. Okay. Very, very unique. In their appearance also they're unique, and in their function also they're unique. Okay, let's see. So the cardiac muscles means cardiac system, heart. So okay, they are the muscles of heart. Very unique kind of muscle tissues. Okay, so they are the muscle cells. They appear in the form of branches, so they form this cardiac muscle pattern. Okay, so they are striated muscles. See, they are striated, but they are also involuntary in nature. They appear to be in the control of the nerve. See, you might think that the heart is under the control of the nerve system, but no, it is indirectly in the control of our nerve system. Okay, but it is not, you can't tell that. Okay, when the brain decides stop, it doesn't stop like that. Okay, but the conduction of heart requires the input of our brain. Anyways, it's a little bit complicated, but you can just tell it as it is in indirect control of a neural system, but not directly. Okay, so that is about cardiac muscles. So anyways, our subject of interest is our skeletal muscles. Okay, so till here, if you have understood, good enough. Okay, if you have any doubts, you can ask me. Yeah. So what is the meaning of mesodermal in origin? As I told you, if you look at your blastula, okay, so when we are made, like after fertilization, we have our zygote, right? The egg fertilizes and becomes zygote. And the zygote starts and dividing. One cell becomes two, two becomes four, four becomes eight. At this point, we call it as morula, and the morula later develops into blastula. So if you look at the blastula, we have diploblastic and we have triploblastic organisms. You might have heard about this in your animal kingdom. Okay. So when we talked about animal kingdom, we talked about diploblastic organisms and triploblastic organisms. The organisms that have three layers in the three embryonic layers, and then we have organisms that are made up of only two embryonic layers. We are three layers. What are those? One is endoderm, then we have mesoderm, the middle mesoderm, and then outer ectoderm. Okay, so what are why these layers are important for us? For example, you have ectoderm. Ectoderm later develops into your nails, your skin, your eyes, your nose, your facial features, your lips, etc. Okay, like the baby as it develops, it's still a ball, and then as the embryogenesis happens, it results in fetus. Fetus means the human form of a baby. So when you look at it, you can see that the baby has a skin and everything. So where did it come from? Which layers of the cells that resulted in? That is the ectoderm. When it comes to mesoderm layers results in your muscles, okay, and it results in your alimentary canal, your blood vessels, etc. All of this is coming from the middle layer. Whereas the endoderm, okay, they give rise to one of the important organs like your heart, okay, and your brain and your spinal cord, etc. They're all endodermal in. So when I talk about mesodermal origin means they're coming from the middle layer of your embryonic layers. So that is called as mesoderm. Did you understand? Yes? Yes. So any other doubts, people? Can we go and study the skeletal muscles? Hmm? Chalo. Toto, the guys from Lakshadweep, our students from Ramnagar, ನಿಮ್ಗೆ ಅರ್ಥ ಆಗ್ತಿದ್ಯಾ? Very nice. Okay, and then we have Isla. Yes, are you guys there? Yeah. Chalo. Very nice, very nice. Cheers, people. ಹಿಂಗೆ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ ನಮಗೂ ಫುಲ್ ಖುಷಿ. I'm talking Kannada, people. Little bit of sentiment. Anyways. Chalo. Now we have skeletal muscles, huh? Now, skeletal muscles are, let's say that we take the muscle, okay? Which muscle? Let's say I take the muscle from my thigh or from my arm or my forearm. And then when I look at this muscle, one cleaner, one mom, okay, well, sorry. When I take one proper piece of a muscle and then I observe this muscle under a proper magnifying glass. So let's say this is the piece of muscle and I look at under the magnifying glass. What I can see is this muscle is not just one piece, but there are pockets within these muscles where these muscle fibers are very uniquely arranged. So this is the whole of a muscle. Okay, this is the whole of a muscle. Okay, this is the whole of a muscle. Now, when I look at this muscle, I told you that they are arranged in small, small packet-like structures. What is arranged? Muscle fibers are arranged in a packet-like structure. So let us call each of these packets of these muscles as fascicle. What are they called as? Fascicle. Cicle. Okay, they are called as what? Fascicle. So these packets in which the muscle fibers are arranged are called as what? Fascicles. So see, fascicle is like a packet, correct, right? Let's like one small bag. So within this bag or within this pouch, these muscle fibers are arranged. So the fascicle should have a layer, isn't it? So the layer of the fascicle, see this entire layer, each layer of this fascicle is called as perimysium. What is it called as? Peri, M-Y-S-I-U-M. So perimysium is like the wall, like this. This is the fascicle. Okay. Within this fascicle, what do we have? Muscle fibers. So what do we have? Muscle fibers. I'll write it here. I think you can see here. Muscle fiber. Okay. So we have muscle fiber. So several muscle fibers are held together by one layer. So what is this layer? This layer is called as perimysium. Okay. Now, all the fascicles, many fascicles are there. You can see 1, 2, 3, 4. Many fascicles are there, right? So all these fascicles, okay, all these fascicles are wrapped around. Okay, all the fascicles are held together by a separate layer called as epimysium. Okay, I'll write it here. Epi, M-Y-S-I-U-M. What is epimysium? Epimysium is a big layer that holds several fascicles. Okay. What is perimysium? Perimysium is a layer of each fascicle that holds many muscle fibers. So, again, I'll repeat. Let's say that we take a muscle and we observe this muscle in its cross section. We take a cross section. I think even I don't eat meat, but I think some of you who eat meat, when the raw flesh without uncooked flesh, if you take a cross section, I think you can see that they are arranged in small, small packets. Okay, you can see that there are small pouch-like structures within this muscle. Okay, so this pouch-like structures within this muscle is called as a fascica or the fascicles. Okay, so what are these fascicles? These fascicles are like pouch-like structures that are enclosing many of the muscle fibers. Okay, a muscle is a whole unit. Okay, and then you have the pouches that hold these muscle fibers. Muscle fibers are the one that act as the contractile units or the functional units of the muscles. So muscle fibers are like pillar-like structures. So they are all grouped together, and this group of muscle fibers are enclosed by a small boundaries. So the small boundaries are called as perimysium, and each boundary enclosing this muscle fibers are called as what? A fascica of a muscle, or it is also called as muscle fascicle. Okay, are you understanding? So if you understood what is muscle fiber, and what is fascicle, and what is perimysium, and what is epimysium. Okay, so epimysium is something that we have as the whole. Okay, this is epimysium, and then within epimysium, what is there? There are several fascicles. Each fascicle has a layer, and that layer is called as perimysium. And within the perimysium, what do we have? We have a lot of muscle fibers. Okay, so now again, come here. So these fascicles are held together by common collagenous connective tissue. So within this, what do we have? We have a collagenous fiber that holds all these fascicles together. Okay. Now, as I told you, they contain each of these fascicles. They contain what? Muscle fiber. Now, when you look at a muscle fiber, as I told you, they are like pillar-like structure. Let's say that they are like pillar-like structure. So each of this muscle fiber, you have to just imagine it like a cell. Okay, just consider this muscle fiber as a cell. Okay, do we have a? Okay, we don't have a structure of muscle fiber, anyways. Okay, let's just imagine that each muscle fiber is like a cell. So what do a cell have? A cell should have a plasma membrane. Let's say that this is our muscle fiber, okay, and this muscle fiber should have a plasma membrane like structure. So this plasma membrane of the muscle fiber is called as sarcoplasm. Okay, it is called as what? Sarcoplasm, plasma membrane. Or for always with the muscle fiber, we use a term called as sarco. Okay, sarcoplasm is a plasma membrane of the muscle fiber that encloses what? So in every cell, okay, this is a muscle fiber. We know that the muscle fiber should have a boundary because we are just imagining muscle fiber as a cell. Okay, so that boundary which we commonly called as plasma membrane. But here for the muscle fiber, we can't call it as plasma membrane, but we call it as sarcoplasm. Correct, right? We call it as sarcoplasm. Now, oh, sorry, people. We call it as sarcolemma. Sarcolemma. We call it as sarcolemma. Sarcolemma is like the plasma membrane of the muscle fiber. Within this sarcolemma, what do we have? We usually have cytoplasm, correct, right? We usually have cytoplasm or protoplasm. Similarly, muscle fiber also have sarco sarcoplasm. I'm sorry about the reversing the names. So again, I'll repeat. Each muscle fiber encloses sarcoplasm, which is like the cytoplasm, through a boundary, okay, or through a membrane, which you call it as sarcolemma. So when they ask what is the name of the plasma membrane of the muscle fiber, you should tell it is called as sarcolemma. And then what is the protoplasm or the cytoplasm of the muscle fiber called? It is called as sarcoplasm. Now, if I look at the sarcoplasm, if I look at what is present in the sarcoplasm here, what I see is within the sarcoplasm, there are not just one nuclei. Each cell should have one nuclei, right? But here it is not like that. There are many nuclei that is freely floating within the sarcoplasm. So I can see that it is in a multi-nucleated condition. So this multinucleated condition is also called as syncytium. So when they ask you the sarcoplasm is in what condition, so you should tell it is in the syncytium condition. So why we call it a syncytium condition? Because it is made up of multiple nuclei floating in the same protoplasm or sarcoplasm. Understood? Okay. So what is a membrane that surrounds the sarcoplasm called as? It is called as sarcolemma. And what is the protoplasm of a muscle fiber called? It is called as sarcoplasm. And then what state is in the sarcoplasm? Sarcoplasm is in the syncytium condition or multinucleated condition. Okay, we're almost running out of time. Anyways, now we saw the cell, and then we saw what is the plasma membrane called as, or the membrane called as. So that is sarcolemma. And what is the protoplasm called as? That is the sarcoplasm. And within the sarcoplasm, the most important thing that we look at is a nuclei. And we saw that this nuclei is in the multinucleated stage or syncytium stage. Okay. And then one more important thing is the cell organelles that we look at. When you look at the cell organelles of the muscle fiber, very important thing that we have to observe is the endoplasmic reticulum of the muscle fiber. They act like calcium banks. They act like what? Calcium banks. So they act like calcium banks and they have a unique responsibility to play. Usually when we talk about the endoplasmic reticulum involves in lipid synthesis or the protein synthesis, etc. Right, people? But here, the muscle fibers endoplasmic reticulum, they have the role of storing and releasing of calcium. So that is why the name of the endoplasmic reticulum of the muscle fiber is given as sarcoplasmic reticulum. Okay. So what is sarcoplasmic reticulum? Sarcoplasmic reticulum is nothing but the endoplasmic reticulum of the muscle fiber. Okay. Why it is called as sarcoplasmic reticulum? Because it is a storehouse of calcium ions. Did you get it? So this is very important. Okay. Now, if I talk about the muscle fiber, and then if I look at the sarcoplasm, that is the plasma membrane, sorry, that is the cytoplasm of the muscle fiber, if I just look at it, what I can see is there are filaments that are arranged in a parallel fashion. Okay, if I look at the protoplasm of a muscle fiber, what I can see is there are numerous filaments that are arranged very parallel to each other. So these parallelly arranged filaments are called as myofilaments, or it is also called as myofibrils. Very simple, students. Okay, don't get it too hectic. We'll just go back once more. We have muscle. Okay, this is a muscle, let's say, and we take the cross section of the muscle. Okay, when I take the cross section of the muscle, what I see is each of the muscle is divided into small pouch like structures. So these small pouch like structures is called as what? Fascicles. Each fascicle, okay, all the fascicle is held together by collagen, and each fascicle holds what? It holds many muscle fibers. Okay, each fascicle holds many muscle fibers. Now we are looking at one muscle fiber. When I look at one muscle fiber, each muscle fiber, okay, is a cylindrical like structure. Okay, it's like a cylindrical like structure. So what does it have? It has a membrane. What is this membrane called as? Sarcolemma. And within this membrane, we have the protoplasm. What is this protoplasm called as? Sarcoplasm. Okay, easy, right? So in the protoplasm means what should be there? Nuclei should be there. How many nuclei we have? We have multiple nuclei. So this multiple nuclei is called as what? Syncytium nuclei or syncytium stage. And apart from the nuclei, what unique thing we can observe is the presence of endoplasmic reticulum. And this endoplasmic reticulum is also called as what? Sarcoplasmic reticulum. Okay. So why do we call it a sarcoplasmic reticulum? Because it stores and releases calcium ions. So we will talk about the role of calcium ions in the later phase, but these are the parts that we have to remember 100%. And what else did we talk about? We talked about, if I look at the protoplasm, okay, the same protoplasm. Which one is that? The sarcoplasm. If I'm looking at the sarcoplasm under a microscope, what I can see is there are bands like structures that are parallelly arranged. So these band like structures that are parallelly arranged is also called as myofibrils, or it is also called as myofilaments. Okay, this myofibrils or myofilaments. So each of these myofibril or myofilaments, if I look at it even more cleanly, what they look like is they appear to have a dark band and a light band. Okay, so this dark band and the light band appearance is because of a special proteins that is present within the myofibril. Okay, so if I look at the myofibrils, how do they look? They look dark, they look light. They look dark, they look light. So they're alternatively arranged. So why are they arranged? And what is the composition? Why is the reason that some bands are looking dark and some bands are looking light is because whichever the dark portion we have is made up of a different type of a protein. Whichever we have the light bands, that is also made up of a different protein. So let's say whichever we have the light band, okay, so the light band is made up of light fibers or light filaments, which we call it as actin. Okay, so this actin and myosin are the proteins or are the filaments that are responsible for the dark and light appearance. So let's see, the light bands, whichever look light in color, they contain actin. Okay, actin filaments. So these actin filaments are also called as isotropic bands. Remember this I band. Actin is for A for I. Okay, actin is also called as isotropic bands. Actin is also called as light bands. Okay, whereas the dark bands is made up of myosin, and it is also called as anisotropic bands. So M for, okay, myosin is also called as A bands. Why it is called as A bands? Because it is also called as anisotropic bands. One important thing that you have to remember is, students, actin for light bands, actin for I bands. What is I? Isotropic. Actin, isotropic. Myosin, anisotropic. So actin, I band. Myosin, A band. That's it. So for now, you remember this. So next class, I will bring certain diagrams that will help us even more easy to pick up what we're trying to say. And right now, we will conclude the class because it's time. Okay. So if you have any doubts, you ask me, people. All have gone because it's time. All right. Students of Ramnaga, ನೀವು ಹೋಗ್ಬೋದು ನಾಳೆ ಸಿಗುವ